Well, hello. This is, guess what this is? This is Red, Black, and Green, and this is Betty Jean Grant for our 5th edition, I think, on Red, Black, and Green. And I'm going to let you see right now, after I get my pretty face off of this camera, I'm going to let you see the co-host for tonight. Hi, Sherry Sherelle Patton.
Hello, Betty Jean, and thank you. Once again, viewers, you're at another episode of the Red, Black, and Green Show, and it is going to be a thrilling episode. We're going to learn up on Marcus Garvey, Pan-Africanism, the Liberation Flag, and what the UNIA ACL organization is up to today and moving forward into 2020. We have a wonderful guest here today. His name is Mr. AkinDele. Have I said that correctly?
Okay.
Blyden, and he is the person that is in charge of the UNIA organization, the chapter that is here in Buffalo, New York. Now, we're going to start things off a little bit differently in honor of the Right Excellent Mr. Marcus Garvey. I want to read you a poem, and the poem is called The Species Negro. After that poem, I'm going to read you 4 quotes from Marcus Garvey that speak to the allegations of that poem, but also even more accurately, the vision that Marcus Garvey has for we as a people and as a community today. He is as relevant today as he was then, and Mr. Blyden is going to cue us in on how and why Mr. Garvey is and should be relevant in all of our lives. The species Negro transcends time. Many survive to this very day. They shuffle, jive, and prophesy, and agree with everything their masters said. They held their brothers while massa whipped, and tied the rope to the lynching tree, and drove the wagons when slaves were shipped, to be resold again into slavery. They cowered in the back when Tubman led, and loaded the hold when the slave ship sailed, and ran for the hills when Nat Turner bled, and deserted King when he landed in jail. They embraced Marcus with Sambo grins, and enveloped Malcolm with Judas hugs, and were rewarded handsomely for their sins with a community of guns, murders, and drugs. They became deaf when babies cried, when Mom and Milk were jailed away, and Massa knew that they could be bribed with a country club spot and sellout pay. The species Negro transcends time. Many survive to this very day. They shuffle, jive, and prophesy, and agree with everything their masters say. Listen to what...
And who wrote that poem?
That poem was written by none other than the Honorable Betty Jean Grant. Listeners, viewers, pay attention to what Marcus Garvey said. The Negro's chance will come when the smoke from the fire and ashes of 20th century civilization has blown off. Now, let me read that again. The Negro's chance will come when the smoke from the fire and ashes of 20th century civilization has blown off. Be not deceived. Wealth is strength. Wealth is power. Wealth is influence. Wealth is justice, is liberty, is real human rights. Hungry men have no respect for law, authority, or human life. Now, you tell me if he even needed to say this. If the Negro is not careful, he will drink in all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. Now that is what the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey of Order of National Heroes said. Now, you're going to learn a lot about Marcus Garvey, and you're going to learn some things you thought you knew, some things you ought to know, and some things you definitely need to be certain of moving forward. He is just as relevant and no less relevant than the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., than Malcolm X, than Nelson Mandela, all 3 of whom he influenced. Now, Mr. Blyden,
Yes.
You are here to tell us a little bit about yourself as well, I hope. You certainly have. I know AkinDele is a very beautiful, very musical sounding name, but it's more than music. There's a meaning to that expression. And when I saw your name on Facebook, I asked you, what does that name mean? Is it African? And what did you tell me?
It is definitely African. It's a Yoruba derivation. The name was given to me from our spiritual mother, Queen Mother Sangoma, from the Oyetunji village in South Carolina. Excuse me.
Yes, and it means valor walks through the door.
Yes.
Now, they say discretion is the better part of valor, so I'm going to be as discreet as possible and let you elucidate and enunciate and espouse to your heart's content. You have a lot to say, and I wanted you to tell us, if you wouldn't mind, where did the red, black, and green flag come from? The idea, where did the idea for it come from? What does it mean, and what should it mean to us today?
Well, first of all, I greet you in words of peace, shalom, hotep, assalamu alaikum, and as always, race first. I am President Blyden of the Buffalo UNIA ACL Division 433. I'm here joined with my first lieutenant of the Universal African Legion, Nita Burgos. So the question has always come up. It stays coming up. What is the red, black, and green flag? What does it mean? Where does it come from? Is it a liberation flag? Is it a freedom flag? Is it the black flag or so what have you? So just let me give you a couple points. You see I got a couple notes here. I'll make it brief. Point number one, the colors actually have a specific meaning. You know, when we teach about it, we normally talk about the red is for the blood, the black is for the skin, and the green is for the land. But that is just a basic understanding. Those are talking points for us to get the word out. That was always the case for the whole time. However, in 1919, the Universal, I'm going to read basically an interview of someone who interviewed Rabbi Josiah Ford, who actually wrote the national anthem. Okay? The Universal Ethiopian...
They said the national anthem, the UNIA national anthem?
No, the Universal National Anthem for Black people worldwide.
Okay.
We can get into that in 1 second, though.
Okay.
So it's called the Universal Ethiopian Anthem.
Okay.
The national anthem of the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League was written at or within a stone's throw of the site where a young Negro girl about 17 years of age was found brutally murdered and dissected in the year 1919. Now, Ethiopia, Land of Our Fathers was composed because of a song that was out called Every Race Has a Flag But the Coon. When we talk about race, we talk about nation. When in the song they talk about the Scottish and the Irish and the Germans having their own flag and being able to look at that, and how the coon was jealous of that.
So now let's define what coon is, because a lot of young kids don't know what coon means.
A coon it comes from the word barracoon. Barracoons were the makeshift cells that they used to run the captured slaves into and hold them until they could move them to another place.
Does the word barricade come from that, or is it similar or not?
I didn't look. That's a possibility. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna check into that. I don't know for sure. But barracoon was what they called them, and so anybody who came out of those things was a coon. And just in general, those were coons. And then it became a slang and slanderous word here once you got to the States.
So it's used to refer derogatorily to black people?
Black people worldwide. If they call you a coon, that is not a good thing. Don't accept that.
Amen.
So when they say every race has a flag but the coon, one of the things in the song, it was a top 10 song back in the 1920s. Well, actually from 1900 up into the 1920s. One of the verses in the song is that the black flag should have a possum hanging upside down, chewing on some watermelon and some old chicken bones, painted on an old rag. That was the type of thing that was out. So, along with that sentiment, plus the fact that this little girl was brutally beaten and dissected and raped at the same time, they created an anthem for us. And in that anthem, it spoke about, oh, the red blood they spilled on the meadow, her black form that laid on that meadow, and the green grass did tenderly scream. So those lyrics to that verse we'll be able to share to Black Buffalo Business Database later, and We Are Women Warriors, so you can see that and break that down. But we understand that that verse came in 1919. When we talking about red, black, and green, it wasn't just the talking points that we say are red is for the blood, green is for the land, and black is for the skin.
Right.
It is specific to the climate, the racial climate that was happening in the country at the time. So, just one other quick point, because I got 5 points on the flag origins. But next, one point that the people forget about is that Garvey was not alone in this. Now, you notice I just mentioned that Rabbi Josiah Ford wrote that the national anthem. that started with the Red, Black, and Green. Also, names that you don't hear about. Isaac B. Allen, Irena Mormon Blackstone, Walter J. Conway, Carrie B. Merrill, and Harriet Rogers. These are the founders. When you see Mount Rushmore, you see the founding fathers of America. These are the founding fathers of our nation, worldwide. They came together in 1916 in America to create the original UNIA-ACL. 1914 was UNIA in Jamaica. In America, it became the UNIA-ACL. The ACL is the African Communities League that joins us worldwide.
So it's the Universal Negro Improvement Association.
African Communities League.
Okay,
Yes.
absolutely.
Now, the reason that's important, it's important to mention the other peoples because it's not just Marcus Garvey. I just had a conversation today with someone else. They were talking about hero worship. They love to talk about, well, you're a Garveyite, you doing hero worship. That couldn't be farther from the truth. The problem is people haven't been mentioning the other founders. They don't mention Henrietta Vinton Davis. We love talking about the two Amy's, but we have no idea who Cleopatra White is. She's the one who started the Black Cross Nurse Clinic in Belize. She had a makeshift clinic out of the old airport. We don't talk about these things. If we talk about these things, we influence our children we inspire them to try and do those things that were successful in the past. Again, just another quick point. In 1920, when we had the first convention of the UNIA-ACL, August 13th, well, actually through the entire month of August in 1920, 20,000 African delegates from 40 countries worldwide came together to vote on the colors of the flag. So it wasn't just a group of people. It wasn't Garvey saying, hey, we should have a flag. It was 20,000 Africans that came together and said, hey, you know what? These will be the colors. And they signed their names to the paper.
Where did they come together?
Where they came together at Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden at the time couldn't fit 20,000 people inside. So that means you had to have, I think it was 10,000 people at least at a time go in to have the hearing and go out, and then the next 10,000 go in. And so if you can imagine the amount of discipline those people had, the amount of purpose those people had to stay focused for 31 days and have to wait outside sometime if necessary before they got their chance to vote, the pride that was instilled in these people when they started talking about creating a nation and a flag for that nation.
You know, name that legislation that you said, because I think Garvey also influenced the United Nations. The United Nations came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that's something that they've done within the past 20 years. Now, what was that? That was a Universal Declaration.
The Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World.
The
Sherry,
Declaration of Rights of Negro
you
Peoples of
could go
the
a little
World.
closer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but what I'm going to do, but for those who don't know, I know the history of Marcus Garvey. I know how he came to be. I know where he came from, how he came to the United States. But a lot of people don't know that. All they know is a name, Marcus Garvey, and UNA. Could you get a brief biography, someone?
He's leading up to that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Real briefly, because real briefly for a purpose too. But he was born in 1887.
Which was the end of the Reconstruction era.
Right, in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica. He is Jamaica's first national hero. In 1914, he had the idea of UNIA. Didn't get much support from the Jamaica public. He saw Booker T. Washington here in America, read up from slavery, decided he was going to come to America to try and meet with him and try and create a Tuskegee Institute in Jamaica.
School.
Right. One thing about Booker T. Washington, a quick point about him, not only did he build the school, him and his students build the school Tuskegee Institute, they built the bricks. They created the bricks that
Made the
built
bricks.
school.
Made the bricks.
Exactly. And with the message and the mindset being that we will do for self at every single turn. And that was the message that influenced Garvey to come to America. When he got here, unfortunately, Booker T. Washington was dead, and he went to Harlem and saw that Harlem was such a busy place, and that's where black folks was happening, and he set up shop there with the names I just mentioned.
So Marcus Garvey was not only a political leader, he was also a publisher. He was trained apprentice as a very young man in printing, and his godfather, I believe, was in the publishing business. And Marcus Garvey was also a journalist. He said he started his own newspaper, so he was also an entrepreneur. And he was the lead proponent of what became the Black Nationalism movement and the Pan-Africanism movement, but He also influenced the Nation of Islam, and in the Rastafarian religion, he is a prophet. Yes?
Well, not just in the Rastafari, but let me take it point by point what you said. So the first thing you said was that he was a journalist and a typecaster, or a type printer. So he started 4 newspapers, I believe. I don't have them all off the top of my head. As far as him being a political leader, he did start his own political party in Jamaica. As a matter of fact, the remnants of which is still there. The PNP is a derivative of the PPP, which was his People's Political Party. However, the mission with Black nationalism, as a matter of fact, I have a quote here, if we read the quotes, from Malcolm X, as a matter of fact, says, the political philosophy of Black nationalism only means that the Black man should control politics and the politicians in his own community, which was the approach of Garveyism. Malcolm X himself, his parents were both Garveyites and actually met at a Garveyite convention. You said that the UNIA definitely influenced every single Black movement that happened since. There is none that can say that he didn't. However, he wasn't the beginning of Black nationalism.
Right.
Because you got Martin Delany, you got actually Edward Wilmot Blyden, my ancestor, and others, Bishop Turner, people who were speaking about Black nationalism and us coming together worldwide 100 years before Garvey. And Garvey gives reverence to those people and mentions them often in his speeches and writing.
I like that you say that because, like you said, he wasn't necessarily the originator of Black nationalism. However, Garvey is credited as being a lead proponent of what became during the 60s the Black Pride movement.
Well, yeah, because of which the reason was because when the leadership that was in place started to fail in the 60s. Well, that's okay. Yes. When it was visibly, it looked like the leadership in the 60s started to fail. That was the rise of the youth at the time that was reading the history of Marcus Garvey. Then you got Martin and Malcolm out there at the time. And then you have the unfortunate deaths of the two of them that caused the ripple effect across the country.
Another thing I want to say, too, that during this time, the Marcus Garvey was admiring Booker T. Washington and wanted to emulate what he's doing, pull yourself up by your own bootstrap and self-help. There were another person who was at odds with Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois. And when Booker T. Washington died, you didn't see Marcus Garvey following that academia, elitist integration movement that Du Bois had started and was still around to promote. He was just the opposite because he was a separatist. He knows that if you can help yourself, you don't need to be standing next to anybody else to help yourself.
Marcus Garvey was so specific and so deliberate in his separatism that what he said, essentially, even in discussing religion, he talked about God. He said, now the white man sees his God through his own lens. Now, what we are about as Negro people is seeing our God through the same way, but through our lens, and there's nothing that is wrong with that. He started also businesses as well. Now, that Negro Factory Association, do you know about that? Can you tell me about that?
Before we go there, just on the religion thing, one other point. To prove the efforts of the UNIA is the solution for our people. At the time, not only was Garvey came up as a Catholic, the majority of the millions of people worldwide were Christian, the members of the UNIA, Black Christians. Then you have one of his closest advisors, who was a voodoo priest, led by Eleazar Cadet, who was actually sent to the Pan-African Conference as a delegate from the UNIA. Then you have Dusay Ali Muhammad, who was a prominent Muslim scholar back at that time, who was a member of UNIA and was an advisor to Marcus Garvey.
So it's interfaith. You had interfaith support.
You had no choice. There was no other excuses. But the key one that people they overlook is Leonard P. Howe. Leonard P. Howe was credited as being the very first Rasta. Okay, he was a Garvey guy. He was with Garvey in the beginnings. He went down to Jamaica and started Pinnacle. In the process of doing that, Marcus Garvey in 1920 said, "Look to the east. When a black king is crowned, our liberation will be at hand." Rastas in Jamaica hear that and started really looking to the east. People forgot about it after that, but Rastas was paying attention. And then, sure enough, 10 years later, 1930, the crowning of Emperor Selassie I, the King of Kings.
Haile Selassie.
Yes, right, our Trinity. When he rose to power.
Of Ethiopia.
Yes, when he rose to power in Ethiopia under what he claimed is the lineage of David, he was crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Ah, that's right.
That's the title of that's his actual title.
I wondered, I know some of our viewers have also, what was the significance of the nation state Ethiopia?
Well, that's what I want to get to that prophet, the prophet quote you said earlier as far as to be a prophet to the Rastas. I was trying to get to that first because that right there is almost the only prophecy anybody can prove. Because after Selassie got crowned, the liberation was at hand. He immediately issued the Ethiopian World Federation, which granted the Shashamane land grant to any Africans that was away from Africa, at home and abroad, to come back to Africa. After that, you get Ghana being free. You get nationalism began to fall after Selassie got crowned. So, and then as far as Garvey and Selassie actually had a little bit of beef. You know what I mean? They had a little back and forth. Garvey felt like Selassie should have been a little more supportive, and this controversy that was unnecessary. Both of them squashed it. So, but he looked at Ethiopia as a beacon because we need a capital. We need a central place for our government.
Right. So tie in Haile Selassie to the biblical. He's related to the Queen of Sheba, who was one of the concubines of Solomon, if I'm not mistaken, from the Bible. So there's a biblical connection. If you want to do creationism, or you want to do, what's the other one? Not creationism. Do it by evolution. There is a tie to Africa, and there's a tie to being a black Israelite, and there's a tie to people who are living right now being directly involved with people who are in the Bible. So if you want to find out more, I think you need to read about Ethiopia. But I'm going to say one thing too. That Garvey, when he came, I understand he came to Buffalo after he had formed by 1926, 1927. I know he was somewhere in the corner. And Dr. Eva Doyle, who's watching, if I'm not mistaken, charge to my heart and just tell me if I'm incorrect or not. But I think he came here to Buffalo and near Broadway, Williams Street, and there was 10,000 people in Buffalo who were members of the UNIA.
In 1926?
1926, 1927, thereabout.
Okay, that I have not found.
Okay.
I can tell you what I found. We are trying to get some support for the local historical Garveyite district.
Right.
So hopefully at the end I can plug
A little bit louder because we kind of hear.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I'm going to talk up. Okay. So we're talking about the Garvey coming to Buffalo. The very first time Garvey came to Buffalo was October 17th, 1920. He spoke to a crowd of 1,000 people at Buffalo Technical School.
Hutch Tech.
It's now Hutch Tech.
Right.
Back in the day, it was at 333 Clinton Street.
That's where performing arts used to be.
Right.
Downtown Buffalo.
So he had two speeches there the same day, 1,000 apiece. Then later on, the next day, he spoke at another local church. I'm thinking it was Vine Street Church, but I don't have.
That's First Shiloh.
Was that First Shiloh?
Was Pine Street is First Shiloh.
No, I think it might have been Vine Street.
Okay, Vine
Because
Street.
it was a small church that he was supposed to think.
Oh, I
Shiloh was
see.
sort of big at that point.
Right.
But First Shiloh actually is where the Buffalo Garveyites, the historical Buffalo Garveyites, first had their first meetings.
Right.
So in 1926, I don't know. I got proof of about 1,000 members right now in Buffalo. If Sister Doyle is listening, if you got something that says 10,000, please show me. We're looking for that. Because again, with the names of the people it wasn't just Garvey. When we talk about the people that was here in Buffalo, the historical Garveyites here, we talk about Dr. Theodore Kakaza, who ran the Women's and Babies Clinic on Michigan. We got Dr. Ezekiel Nelson,
Right.
who not only ran his own clinics and doctors' offices, he began the first black-owned credit union here in Buffalo. He was a Garveyite. His wife started the second black-owned credit union here in Buffalo, and she was a Garveyite at Bethel AME Credit Union. So Bethel AME Credit Union's origins and the Buffalo Cooperative Economic Society origins all stem from Garveyism. When we talk about, she asked about the Negro's factories, and these things were part of the Negro Factories League. It's not that the government, like the famous quote from JFK, ask not what your government can do for you, but ask what you can do for your government.
Yes.
That is legitimately the same premise that the UNIACL works from. You can't ask what the black government is going to do for you, because you have to do for the black government to build it so we can eventually be in a place for us to do for each other. That's how we got the ships. We didn't get, you can't get $1 million for a boat on pennies and nickels. Think about 1922. Nickels, dimes, pennies, and quarters. It's not dollar bills that they send through the mail. And they were able to get $1 million for boats to be able to do shipping business.
That's a Black Star Line, right?
Black Star Line, yes.
Okay.
And that which was modeled after the White Star Line, which the Titanic was part of the fleet of. But I just want to say to the viewers, if you have a question for Mr. Blyden, the number to call for the Red, Black, and Green Show webcast is area code 716-817-0018. So feel free to call in if you have a question or a comment. And you were saying, sir?
The Negro Factories League. Again, here in Buffalo, the community here in Buffalo was dead serious. I went on a tour with L. Nathan Hare, the Black Buffalo History Tour, Underground Railroad Tour, whatever. And at one point, he did this and said, all that area over there used to be black businesses and black houses, right? But it got wiped out by urban renewal,
Right.
right? And when I started looking at those areas, those was the businesses that the Garveyites would have ran. When you say Broadway and William, you know what I'm saying, that is the area that we talking about preserving as the Garveyite district.
Absolutely, and I want to say, and I'm forever amazed, I was at Gigi's before it burned down, and then when it remodeled, they was able to get old photograph of Buffalo in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and I was very impressed because they had a parade, a veterans parade, down Broadway and William Street, and it was like every sidewalk, every inch of sidewalk were lined with people 10 and 12 and 13 deep, and they were marching down the street, and they were dressed in suits, and they were just so energetic and so powerful. Excuse me. You talk about the political aspect of Garvey and the policy and philosophy. When I think about Marcus Garvey, I think about the Black Star Line. I think about those ships that are owned by black people, and I think about the Blue Cross nurses, and also there was a food co-op too that he had. So Garvey for me is economic. It's for me for self-help, how we can pool our money together and buy a business and expand on a business and have hotels, because they had hotels, they had credit unions, they had bakery, they had taxi staff, they had dry cleaners. So my point is, I'm looking at Garvey, I'm looking at his philosophy to see how can we in Buffalo help ourselves to reach, not that point because I don't think we can, but I hope we can. How can we lay the foundation where we can have self-help instead of relying on grants and loans from this doggone government that cares absolutely nothing about African American. I'm going to say it on Facebook because that is true.
It's true. Well, first of all, there's only one pushback I would say. That the cooperative economics is definitely a part of it, right? But to do that, and to have benefit for future generations, it must have a foundation and a philosophy behind it of unification and of nation.
Yes.
The problem that we have is we got too many clubs and groups, too much individual.
Wanting grants and loans instead of
that too,
getting
that
good money.
Too. But if for example, we said, let's just say everybody is prosperous in this room right now, and you got a $1 million business, she got a $1 million business, so do I. That only benefit us. If we haven't decided that we was going to pull that into a unified governing structure, it's only going to benefit us individually.
It is the reason why there are so many associations, businessmen's associations. Like someone may ever, when you're talking on a show like this, we reach a diverse audience. People.
Orchard Park, Hamburg, Eden.
Yes, but what I recognize is that we also cross generations. This is an intergenerational approach that's wound up being manifested here. So as you're talking, you are educating, I know you are aware of it, you are educating the next generation of African Americans and people from other communities to understand why Marcus Garvey was who he was, why he was important then, why he is still relevant today, and what it is we can take from his legacy and should have in our arsenal so that we can lead more productive, more economically stable, independent, and thriving lives and success, and be more successful as a community. You know, you already mentioned, Mr. Blyden, you said that he was very attentive, Marcus Garvey was very attentive to Booker T. Washington. Both those men had economic independence as the utmost, absolute, highest objective that the black community could have. Even before I hear political independence. I don't know if Booker T. Washington talked a lot about political independence, but I know that he and Marcus Garvey both talk about economic independence, so there needs to be economic autonomy that we as a community, we as a people need to have.
But that part right there, the we as a people and the we as a community, if that part is not clearly laid out and physically unified among, then all of what we just said is just words.
Absolutely. Marcus Garvey's reach extended beyond Jamaica. It extended beyond America. It extended beyond England and the United Kingdom.
Right.
He was effective in getting his voice, his oratory, to the West Indies, to Central America where he lived, to South America.
One of the focuses that I wanted to say tonight, that I want to try and get a little bit away from just focusing on Marcus Garvey. We have to look at the rest of the folks, because when we say the message was economic independence, that was not the primary. The primary was nation. The primary was self-governance. If we don't have an understanding that we are our own government first, we can have all the money in the world and won't. But as a matter of fact, it's rich people right now that's successful.
Right.
And they got friends and they share amongst each other, but they do nothing for the nation of us worldwide.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to say this too. I want to focus on economics. You guys focus on what you want to focus on. I want to focus on, just say 40 years ago, every deli and store in Buffalo was owned by the African American, who employed, including me, and I'm still there, 1 to 3 young kids, young teenagers, not just guys in the neighborhood. So every store had a neighborhood component where they hired for the community.
You know what happened?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what happened, because I was there when it happened. In 1983, we started selling our stores, or people started seducing us with big bags of suitcases. I was offered $95,000 to sell my store. Cash. I refused. A lot of people did not refuse. A lot of children who were the children of these store owners did not want to go back into the business, so he sold. So therefore, we had a change. We had a change in ownership, but we also had a change in employees, because those 125 stores hired at least 375 kids, young boys, mainly from the community. In a stroke of 1 year, they lost their jobs. So what he did, at that time, Republic Steel closed, 1983, 1984. These are pivotal years. 1983, 1984, Bethlehem Steel closed. 1983, 1984, General Electric closed. And at the same time, Westinghouse closed. And so we had a shift of turnover of manufacturing jobs. At the same time, we had loss of our community stores, so the guys couldn't go to General Motors. They could not go to anywhere but McDonald's. McDonald's can't hire everybody in the community. So what they do, they landed up on street corners. They land on street corners at the same time crack cocaine came from New York City. I saw it coming. I sit there and saw the devastation. Within 2 years, we're totally under the control of crack cocaine. Let me finish saying this. So my whole point is, that is our economic condition here. We went from being owners to tenants in our own stores, in our own community. Now, what I see of the Arab American, I'm going to say it, I'm going to give them credit. They didn't go to the bank and say, please, sir, loan us money to buy our stores. They didn't sit there and beg for a grant. What they did, let me finish, was pool their money together, and they bought those stores one by one. When one person had a store, he gave back to a pot of money to buy another store. And so within 5 years, almost every store in Buffalo was taken without a penny from government.
And without a gun being raised.
And without a gun being raised. Okay, I'm going to give you time. Let me finish, because I'm behind this camera. I want to say this. So we have what? We don't have the businesses to start an economic engine. But what we have on a Sunday morning is millions of dollars coming to churches that put the money in 45,000 different banks. Now, what if somebody who's a leader
said, go to First United
would say, listen, my fellow pastors, We're going to help the community. We're going to put our money in one bank because we want CBA. We want community benefit agreement. We want to have loans for our people, low interest loan to start a business.
Or to buy a home.
In fact, we're going to subsidize the business. We're going to hire somebody from the community. That is the vision, the power we have, we're not using. Because if we go to, let's say we got a black credit union, we got a black credit union here in Buffalo. Did anybody know this? It's at St. John's Baptist Church. What if every church, let me finish this. It's not black owned anymore?
Go on.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that, but if it were, we could have gone there and we could have pooled our money together and we could start that conversation about investing, giving out loans for low interest loan or no interest loan so we can build our community up. Because if we don't do it within ourselves, it's not going to get done.
The African American communities has disposable income of about that's the buying power, $1.3 trillion. What can a nation with that type of GDP, $1.3 million, what can you not accomplish?
But see.
Okay, you said St. John not owned by St. So who owns it?
That's too long to get into right now. Anybody, if someone's asking right now, they could just go Google the administration.
Okay, I'm gonna go Google after I finish this.
Trust me, because that is the lineage of the Bethel AME Zion Church, Federal Credit Union, that we was already trying to research. So when we went in, we were trying to make sure we got an account with St. John right now. You know what I mean?
But it's not owned by St. John.
Well, I mean, it's owned by St. John, but to call it black owned is just not necessarily 100%. That's all I'm saying. But, okay, so just real quick, the things that you were saying, Mrs. Grant, when you were just talking about the stores and everything like that, like back in the day, Black Buffalo was black stores, right? And then you mentioned that almost in a 1-year period, everything changed. Mm-hmm. All the jobs go missing, but people still able to offer cash money of $95,000.
Yes.
Right. We're not able to capitalize, but the other nations have been, correct?
Right.
Why is that? There is
unity.
There is only one reason. We don't have a nation mindset.
No.
Right.
We still trying to figure out how we can get a store back. Mm-hmm. We still trying to figure out how we can get a this back and a that.
We're actually trying to figure out how the American dream can be integrated further.
It can.
As if integration has ever accomplished for us what was going to be a long-range
anything that got to do with American dream,
beneficial to me.
Anything that got something to do with American dream, it got nothing to do with us. Start with that. Begin with that and move that all the way out. American dream got nothing to do with us.
I want to ask you a question about that because now we're talking about
let me knock the store thing down real quick because I wanted to talk about the store.
Rather than knock it down, we can agree. We can agree to agree and then agree to disagree. But I want to make sure that we get, because you're saying don't focus just on Marcus Garvey,
right.
But the title of the show was going to be a learning experience for us to find out all of these Garveyism and
because Marcus Garvey, what he would want us to be talking about right now is nation.
That is what I want to talk about. His vision.
So
what was his vision, and what was the vision of his predecessors? And was it different than his or the same as his?
It is the response that I was about to just give. It is what I was about to say.
Okay.
The answer to your question is that when you said that the stores, they immediately started selling their stores.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Somebody had to be able to plan and to come together and plan to go buy these stores because everybody got the same letter. Just like right now, everybody getting the same letter to buy your house. We all seeing the letter. So Bethlehem Steel and all the different businesses, they all closed the same year.
Yes. A lot of store owners work at Bethlehem Steel.
Right.
So buying a store was their second income because they lost the first one.
Right. Sounds to me more like a plan.
It is
something
plan.
that just accidentally happened. Once we look at the fact that it's a plan, we have to say now, whose plan? We know from the history of the country that we happen to be in that it is the government's plan to decentralize money in areas where we live and cause us specifically to be in poverty. That is the plan been at from the beginning. So, when we see other races and nations benefit, we have to then say, why?
How is what I say. How is it? I know that Marcus Garvey, well, you say not focus on him, but I learned so much by focusing, doing a focused effort. Marcus Garvey admired the Irish.
Okay, sure. Let me finish and we're going to go back to you.
I got you, because I'm about to go straight to the Irish in a second.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I'm going to go straight there. Because the one thing that the Arab Association has that we don't have and never had since the 80s is an association for us. Because we don't want to talk about that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
We don't trust each other.
We talk about the economic thing.
Okay, let me say this.
If we talk about
Right.
the economic thing and we're serious about economic development for all of us, not just for individuals, we then have to look at what was successful.
Exactly.
The successful people have come together under a nation. When they go
That
to
is true.
the other thing that you didn't mention that happened back in '83 and '84 was when the distributors wouldn't sell y'all stuff the right way.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why I'm going to tell you now. Can I tell you now? Let me say now.
The only reason that they would sell to the other ones is because they went to them in
Buying
blocks.
power.
Let me tell you what happened.
I really want to just finish.
Let me tell you what happened. In 1984, when they got the stores, right, they formed an organization called the Yemenite Merchant Association.
Yes.
They formed an organization. I'm a store owner, so I wanted to join. So I'm taking my naive self to one of the owners, say, you know what, I want to join your organization. They said, no, you can't. I said, well, I have a store where you can't join. I said, what? You have to be of Yemen descent. You can't join. It wasn't Arab because Yemens are not Arabs. That's a difference.
Trust me, right now, those Yemenis are in the Arab Association.
Okay, I absolutely tell you this. So they say you can't join, okay? I said, okay, I can't join. So I go to, I'm going to say it because it's true, Trippy Foods on William Street.
Yeah.
And I buy my grocery. And in front of me was an Yemenite merchant. And he had a lot of grocery. And they rang it up, and then they say, it comes to $586, 10% off. It is $500 so-and-so dollars. 10% off. What the heck is he talking about? So I let him get his stuff. And so when I said, we rang mine up, they said, your stuff is $632. I said, and what about the 10%? They said, what 10%? I said, you just gave the guy ahead of me 10%. I want the same 10%. They said, you can't get it because you're not in this merchant association. Got to belong to association. So that right there was discrimination, right?
No.
But that's the advantage they had. But let me tell you this.
Discrimination.
Well, let me just, I thought it was discrimination. There was another point. So they finally, I started not getting my juice delivery. I started not getting my potato chip deliveries. I started not getting my Wonder Bread deliveries. So it got to the point that I had to call and get my potato chip Frito-Lays sent by UPS when there was a truck, Frito-Lays, right down the street delivering potato chips. And so when I asked the juice man, how come you're not stopping here? He said, I can't talk about it. So when he lost his job with that juice distributor, he said, Miss Grant, I want to apologize. He said, I couldn't come because they told me, those merchants told me that if I stop at your store, we're going to take our business somewhere.
Right.
And that's what happened. So they really tried to force me out. They couldn't force me out by selling. So they built stores all around me.
Right.
And then they caused the wholesalers not to bring products to my store, trying to freeze me out. So making a long story short, that is what they call cutthroat operation.
No, it's called smart business.
It's market forces, market dynamics, and it also was discrimination. I can tell you that if that Merchants Association had accepted public dollars, if they would have been funded at any level by money from the government, you had a discrimination lawsuit against them.
But the problem is they didn't accept public dollars.
Exactly.
They did it by
Because
themselves.
they fought like a nation.
Absolutely.
Is the point.
Go ahead, Nate. Go ahead.
Is the point.
Here's the point.
But real quick, I did want to fly through these things real quick because the reality of the situation is this right here. If you look right here, you see, we was just talking about the Arab Association and the Yemen Association, but you see here you got the Japanese Association. You see here you got the Chinese Association, the Jewish, and who else is on here?
And where
the
are we?
Seneca Nation, the Kaisertown Association. You feel me? If you go down Broadway right now, you see the big blue and yellow flag with a flag that's pretty relevant in today's news. It's the Ukrainian flag. It's been there our whole lives. They got their embassy right there on Broadway near Fillmore. So my point being,
People are not even aware.
we won't even address the subject of beginning our government. One more picture I wanted to show real quick. You can see this little purple flag right here. The purple flag is very descriptive. It is the Iroquois Nation flag. Those are the 5 parts of the Iroquois Nation: the Onondaga, Oneida, and so on and so on.
Tuscarora.
All right? I think the Tuscarora came on at the end to be the 6th one, right? So if you look at that, that's 5 different entire nations coming together for one nation to get a benefit. When that happens, you look around this area right now, you see the Seneca Casino, don't you?
Yes, you do. Buffalo Creek.
Apple juice, you see Iroquois construction. You see they got the
Seneca
cement,
cigarettes. Seneca
cigarettes. However you want it. They don't have to wait and play the game of asking nobody for nothing. You know why? Because they came together as a government.
Right.
It's not about, if we got to starve for 5 years, no money, economics ain't even a discussion, but we have an understanding amongst us and our children that nationhood is first. Do you understand what Yemenites are coming over here from? They running from Arab oppression. Right over there, they grow up grimier than you can ever imagine over here, running and ducking for freedom. They come here and then further oppress. You feel me? Through the same organization, because true indeed they have the Yemenite Association, but the majority of those stores that are actually Yemenite owners are part of the Arab Association because of the buying power. You see what I'm saying? Because they have the nationhood in their soul. It won't shake them.
So it's the Arab American Association now. It'll kind of evolve into not the Yemenite American, which was a premier in the 80s and the 90s and 2000, to the Arab American Association.
Right. I showed somebody this picture today, and they said, "Yo, I didn't even know it was a Japanese group of buffalo." I said, "You ain't supposed to."
They don't even, when they apply for social services, they don't go downtown. They go to their own community.
Because there's no need to. But because what we have to do is, there's no discussion about economics if we don't have an understanding of what the economics is for. If we're not talking about building a nation and governing said nation, everything has been a waste of words.
Mr. Blyden,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
from the younger generation than some people are, but I know of whence I speak, and when there are people even younger than me. Now, we have not been conditioned to think like a nation. We have been conditioned, even to the point of cultural conditioning, to think integrationist, to think about joining somebody else's team, about how can we become a bigger part of somebody else's dream, how can we get their dream into our minds. So we're not conditioned to think like a nation. Let me ask you for the vision of the UNIA.
Yes.
What is the vision of the UNIA? How do you get this generation that exists right now to start thinking like a nation, or to think about nation building? How do you do that when we just began to embrace Africa? I remember growing up, to talk about somebody looking African was an insult to that person. If someone wanted to call you a name, they called you black and ugly. So to a generation that Africa was something black and ugly to, how do you convince us as the UNIA to think like a name? Or do you write us off and say, can't do anything with that generation?
Some people have been written off. But currently, right now, we have a movement right now that's pushing and saying that we're not African. If you look up African Americans ain't African, whole nonsense movement about that right now. I just showed you how the Israelite, the Vodun, the Muslim, and the Christian can all link up under a nation and get that success. That's the history. Right now, if you listening right now and you heard any of the things that Sister Betty Jean just said, and you don't understand that we need to have a nation based on that alone, some folks will have to get written off, unfortunately. Marcus Garvey also said he didn't want, first of all, it's not a Back to Africa movement. He didn't want everybody coming anyways, because some people is no good here and would therefore be no good there. And it's been proven time and time again. One other point, we talked about Ireland real quick. I'll hit on that. Ireland gained its independence in 1919. How did they do it? It was a military move. They ended up unifying under their flag, okay?
And the church.
Yes, but they unified and they made that move. We got too many differences amongst our religious things.
Yes.
So that's why the UNIA is the best solution, because there's no religion involved. It's got nothing to do with religion.
Indeed.
True indeed, he said, see your God in your own eyes, but do that over there. When you come here, we come into the table to see what's good for the people. Malcolm X said, we catching hell not because we were Muslim or Israelite. We catching hell because of our skin color.
Now, what we do about people who are running away from their blackness or our blackness.
We're gonna have to let
Let me
some of them
tell you
go.
why, because I kind of wish when we start calling ourselves African American and Black, I kind of wish we had changed NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Because colored people, in 1950, every black person down south who was not called the N-word was called colored. We weren't called Negroes, we weren't called black, we weren't called anything but colored. So when they formed the NAACP in the 1930s, W. Du Bois and others, they had black people in mind because who needed to be advanced in 1939? Who was here being discriminated against was colored people. So it was specific for black.
Right.
Now you have people saying, oh, no, we can't do that. We got to be inclusive. We got to say colored people includes all people. It does not. The NAACP's primary mission in 1930, and should be now, is for the advancement of African American people. So maybe we should change that name.
It might be they chose that name on purpose. It might be that they put some thought into it.
Exactly.
Because now when you really look at that, they start wasn't for African American people, as a matter of fact. It definitely wasn't by African American people.
Indeed.
And then let's look at what colored means. Are we colored people? You would never know.
Well, black is not a color,
the
to be honest.
Well, hold on
Or
a second.
white.
We can get there. We can take it there. But the term colored, when it came to dealing with people in America, first came into practice in the legislation, talking about specifically people who were mixed with the slave master, with mulattoes,
That's right.
or Mexicans or Native Americans.
Like W. Du Bois, excuse me. He was mixed.
He's another. Okay, you know what? Time out. So, colored people, we may not be colored people. Somebody suggested that all of us been raped by our slave masters. There's no way physically possible. Every person that was a slave, every woman, would have been raped by every slave master, and every child would have been a child or product of that. It's impossible by numbers. So logically, when you think of how much we outnumbered them on those slave plantations, we all can't be just descendants of slave masters. It doesn't make sense, but notice that's been the narrative. The narrative also been in the NAACP. Now let's talk about Du Bois. So his name is not Du Bois, it's Du Bois.
I pronounced it Dubois when I was in college, and I was corrected.
You
But
should
I
have
went to a
been.
historic
I was
black
too.
college.
You were absolutely right, because everybody know that's French. It's somebody sitting there trying to be hoity-toity, trying to change up his jump off. And if you get a chance, go look up his explanation as far as why he said it like that. But anyways, we realized that Booker T. Washington and Du Bois had a debate. Here in Buffalo, they had issue because Booker T. Washington was the leading voice for Black America. He was teaching people to build your own. Don't try to do nothing with nobody, but build up your own. Okay,
Right.
you gotta get $2 from white folks over here so you can do this. Do that, but then go back over here and do what you said you was gonna do with it. Now, enter Du Bois. He decides that he wants his turn in the light. There is no other motivation that I can find for this brother to come do the things that he did. He immediately tried to subvert the actions of Booker T. Washington as soon as he came to public review. His friend, I can't think of his name now, the one that he started, I just had it in my head. But anyway, he went and started a riot at a Booker T. Washington convention. Booker T. Washington talked about black economics at a black businessman's convention. The brother comes there for the purpose of disrupting the meeting. Then
Sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar because it's happening exactly today. As a matter of fact, when you see the problem that Du Bois and Marcus Mosiah Garvey had, almost exactly to the day, right? Marcus Garvey wrote letters to Du Bois. Said, yo, listen, I see you popular. Check this out. How about you come down? Let's link up on this Black Nation thing. Du Bois said no. Okay? And later...
He called him a radical, didn't he?
He called him a radical. He called him an ugly, fat Jamaican.
He sure did.
A little dark skin. All
Okay.
the things that you was just talking about.
Goodbye.
This is what Du Bois, this famous intellectual, was doing. You should see the cartoons that they was putting out in the Crisis, this famous newspaper that everybody loved. Du Bois was mad at Booker T. Washington for quashing stories in the newspapers about them. So Du Bois ended up learning the system of that and got the Chicago Defender and got the Crisis and got the other one, the Crusader, I think it was, to talk bad about Garvey and denounce the movement, the largest movement and only successful movement, run from the top to the bottom, race first. You know what I mean?
Yes.
One last point. He went over to Liberia, The UNIA had a negotiation for land in Liberia. You've heard the word Firestone? The
Yes.
company Firestone?
Right.
Where do you know it from?
I know it
Tires.
from auto, the auto industry.
Tires.
Tires specifically.
And the
Yes.
family.
Rubber.
And
Yes.
the family. Tires is made out of
Rubber.
Rubber coming from trees.
Trees, yeah.
Rubber trees come from Liberia.
Liberia, Africa, yeah.
We had acres and acres of land that was about to be ours. Dubois personally, single-handedly, went over there with the brother from the Firestone family and undermined that. Imagine where we would be as a race if we had that. So when we look at some of our heroes, they may not necessarily be our heroes because they purposely took us away from being indoctrinated into nationhood, being brainwashed into doing for self. And so yeah, I feel like that is a little bit that's my calling. I'm here to keep banging folks in the head with it until people get it. One of the things that we talked about as far as the celebrations, remember we talked about Marcus Garvey Day. I swear on my soul, I bet you Marcus Garvey would not want us celebrating his birthday.
That's August
August 17th.
August 17th.
In the Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World, 20,000 Africans decided that August 31st should be our holiday worldwide. Now, how did we not learn that?
It's 13th or the 31st?
The 31st is the holiday. The 13th
Okay.
is when they actually signed the declarations.
Oh, okay.
That's a holiday. For us, that's just a personal thing for us. We just like that. But the 31st, the Pan-African holiday. So how did we even get to the point where we talking about, we don't got no holidays of our own? Yeah, we do.
Not to lend credence to it, but Dubois, as you say, his name is
That's his
correctly
name.
pronounced,
That's his name.
actually called him not only a fat, ugly black man, also said this, but he has clever eyes and a big head. I don't know about a big head, but he was certainly no fool. He was an intellectual. He was a great orator, spoke very distinctly, and had something to say in the content of what he was saying, and as you say, gave honor to his predecessors.
Every time.
Now let me ask you, just personally, if you could step back away from the platform that the UNI organization is and has provided you, what do you see as being the correct response to the question that so many people in the community ask, and I hear them asking it, even if they don't use the exact same words, they're all saying this, pointing to the same problem. Where do we go from here? Where do we start? How do we begin? $1.3 trillion every year sounds good. It's more than interesting. It's crucial. Where do we begin, though? How can we? There's so many voices. There's so many different organizations. A lot of people don't belong to an organization, and I'm one of those people that is for civic activism. If you do not belong to an organization, you're not contributing possibly to the struggle that we all are involved in. So you're just stepping back. Where do we start as a community? Where do we begin, even as households within the community? Where do we start?
Well, a simple start is something that we just initiated, well, not just initiated, we've been doing it for some years and we just brought it back, is the shovel brigade. So service, you know what I mean? We try to lead by example. Go do something for somebody. Go service somebody. If you can help an elder, help a child, those type of things, self-sacrifice is the key to nation building. People have to see that giving back to the community physically without asking for some sort of reciprocity. We just had the Little League games where they were going to cancel the Little League games if the people didn't come out. Remember?
Yes.
Sister
Yes.
you were there with me, right?
Right.
People should have been flooded now. Like, what are you talking about? They're going to cancel. We have to have people come physically be at places. So when Mrs. Grant asked people to come out, people have to physically be there.
When there is a march, there has to be a march.
Well, maybe not a march.
But-
We're looking for your marches. But if we got a march where we about to go somewhere, when we leave
Or
that place,
boycott.
we gonna get an actual result. That's another thing. Let me just say this real point. Our position, specifically, UNIA's position here in Buffalo's position on marching and protests, is we not necessarily down with that. We can go as a security detail, but if we not actually having a product that we about to leave with, like, yo, we not leaving until such and such is done, then we can't be a part of that.
Right.
Because what I've noticed is protests here in Buffalo, what we do is we go apply for the permit and we be out there for the allotted amount of time. That ain't protesting.
No, it's not. You know what's protesting is? Withholding your money.
That too.
Now, we got block grant money coming in. The block grant money, CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Money, comes to Buffalo at least $18 million a year to alleviate poverty and blight. I'll say it again, to alleviate poverty and blight. That means that if you low-income homeowners or senior citizen low-income and you got a roof that needs to be repaired, to help to relieve it is to fix that roof. That's what the money comes to Buffalo for, block grant money. If your street needs to be paved, that's what the money's coming for. Your roof needs, your house needs to be sided, that's where it comes from. If you need a grant to replace your water lines, to your furnace, whatever, that's what the money is coming for. But you got money coming in, and also if you want to buy a home, and you're low income, you qualify for a loan, no interest loan or grant, that's what the money's coming for. Also to repair and replace broken down sidewalks and playground equipment. Also to run community centers so you can get those skills, job training, educational, recreational, so our kids can get off the street. That is what it's coming from. But if you have money coming in to help you to pay your mortgage or to put new siding on your house, and this money is given to big developers to build rental income, and with your money, because they get the money from the government, they don't pay taxes, property taxes for 12 years. So they'll say, we're going to go on Jefferson, we're going to build an apartment. They are going to build an apartment, but it's not all low-income apartments. It's only set aside 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe 18. So I want to say this. So if the money that comes through the federal government, basically I'll be in the third poverty-stricken city in this country behind Detroit and Cleveland, Buffalo's third, and we get tens of millions of dollars coming in, probably $300 or $400 million over the last 10 years. And we got our street looking like they are, got seniors' houses not being repaired, but we got every loft in Buffalo being redeveloped for market rate apartments, and then those landlords who are collecting rent from year one, they're collecting rent, right? Market rate rent that was built, that loft or warehouse built using poverty-stricken money, and the developer who gets the rent every month, or the owner, does not pay property taxes for 12 years, but you, who's sitting here in this ragged old house that needs to be a roof replaced, and Uncle Sam gave you the money to get your roof replaced, but you can't get it replaced, but you're required to pay your property tax every single year.
And on that
What
note,
is fair about that?
And on that note, what we have to do, because it is 8:30, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for watching another exciting edition of the Red, Black, and Green webcast. We hope we have given you information, news you could use. We hope we've enlightened you on subject matter that you might not have been aware of before. And I want to close just on a quote from Mr. Marcus Garvey.
I'm giving the last word.
And then I will give Mr. Blyden the last word. Marcus Garvey said, and I quote, "The Negro's chance will come when the smoke from the fire and ashes of 20th century civilization has blown off." Sounds like he knew there would be devastation in the 20th century, and hasn't there been? And if you could only see what's happened in the 21st century so far. And Mr. Blyden?
Real quick on that, Garvey said, another quote, we'll wait 200 years if need be. We only at 99, so be patient.
But we won't be here to help.
Exactly.
We won't help.
We don't even plan. Don't worry about it. We're not about to see nothing in our lifetime. Plan for the future.
No,
future generations.
but history repeating itself is not if it hasn't been taught. So we got to do something.
Let me just
We
answer
got to
your
educate
question,
and inform the generation come after us.
what you just mentioned, as far as the block grants and all that, those is government grants and things like that. Don't forget, the premise is the United States government never was for us and is not for us now. Their goal, make it simple. I know you're trying to wrap it up. Real quick.
We got time. We on Facebook. We got no
Don't
second
forget,
time.
eugenics and population control is real. The majority of the presidents and administrators of the United States of America were eugenicists and population
Could you explain what the word means? A lot of
Yes,
people don't know.
Eugenics was a practice that tried to, it was pseudoscience that tried to justify ethnic cleansing, but just culling the population.
By sterilization, poor and people who were indigent,
Right.
and by birth control through Planned Parenthood.
Exactly. So now, when we talk about that, when we know that this is the same government that do that, when it's time for the individual to fix their house so they can live right, that's not going to be a concern. We know that constitutionally, I just looked this up again, constitutionally, the justice just ruled that the police don't even have a constitutional duty to protect you. So when we talk about what this government can do for us, it's got to go. We don't even worry about them. We need to focus on building our government. Defense, protection, and security of ours is what it is. We need to build something for us, protect it to the dirt. And again, I wasn't joking. Garvey said 200 years if need be. We had 99 years. If just in planning, we pretend that nothing that we're not going to see no benefit in our lifetime. We're just going to try and build something that will be here for the 200-year mark. And if we move like that, and we have our children watching us move towards that, then it's just like that movie Moana. I don't know if y'all seen it, but the younger people that's watching have seen Moana. At the very end, the kings are putting their rock on the top of the rock. What rock did you lay? What foundation did you drop? She put her little flower on it. It's going to mess up everything in the future, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's what she dropped on the foundation. What are we, right now we just laying sand. We've been laying sand for the last 99 years. It's time for us to now start putting some bricks and mortar on this. You know what I mean? And the only way to do it is to listen, we can't be mad at such and such. We can't be like, yo, because you believe this, I can't rock with you. We don't got that time to do that. Mind you, we go out another 100 years, but we need to be focusing on how we can get there. No, there was no focus between that.
Because our enemy, or I'll say our opposition, thinks 100 years into the future.
Easy.
So they are already at what we are looking to be our 100-year mark, and which will be our 200-year indicator. Power to the people. Stay informed. Thank you for watching.
Check this little logo.
On that note, I want to say next week we'll probably talk about the Kerner Commission and where we can go to make sure
Oh, we could have talked about the Kerner Commission
to make sure that we're. But that's right now. That's not 200 years, Blyden.
Well, but the Kerner Commission said that we're going to give harsher laws to racial issues, correct?
Yes.
Right. Did it work?
No.
No. So, just like Malcolm X said, I got it right here, the quote he said, basically, the Civil Rights Act is the same other, how many Civil Rights Acts? You know how many Civil Rights Acts there's been?
I don't know how many.
Let's check it out.
Well, there's one 1899, wasn't there?
Check it. 1,
Pledge.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and these are just the 9 that Wikipedia dropped for you.
9.
Yes.
The reality of it is, so what it lets you know is the fact that you got to do another one next year and another one next year, meaning that what is we doing this for? As a matter of fact, look at the way the Donald Trump situation is right now. They're telling you that they're going to disrespect the congressional subpoena. They're telling you that their system is fraudulent. All we need to do is build our own on some real business. And be black, buy black, and everything else will take care of itself, like Garvey said. I'm telling you. Like the quote that Malcolm X said, I know y'all trying to rap it. I know she's really right.
We had time.
But look, check it. He said, the question was, Malcolm X was talking to an interviewer, and he said, we don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposed to be the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for it from Congress and the president in Washington, D.C. The interviewer said, how will the passage of the Civil Rights Bill affect voter registration? And Malcolm X said, anytime you have to pass a civil rights bill to make your voter registration or voter opportunities increase for black people in this country, that in itself is a slap at the entire system of democracy. The only thing that will affect voter registration is when our own leaders form some kind of political education program that makes our people become more politically mature, politically alert, and aware of what their involvement and participation in politics will bring them. Voter registration without voter education is a waste of time. And it's the same words I've been saying for the last 5 years. If we're not going to sit down and have a group of people come down and decide who can run, I ain't talking about who we about to vote for. We're going to decide who's going to run. And until we know that you understand the purpose of nationhood, until we know that you're going to be able to get in office and be racially responsible, you know you're going to be able to take the heat and do the things that's necessary. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to lose support. You're going to lose money. That's why economics can't be the primary, because you're not going to have money.
Right, and so I know I want to say that next week we're going to be talking about the Kerner Commission.
I'm coming back.
We're going to, well, the Kerner Commission, maybe so. If the other person doesn't show up, we already invited somebody. The Kerner Commission, the Erie County Anti-Poverty Commission, and we're going to talk about the black grant monies coming in, and what can we do to eradicate that title of being the third most impoverished city in the United States.
May I shake this man's hand while
please
you?
do.
Yes,
you got
absolutely,
low.
absolutely.
Talk to the people, sir.
Race first.
Absolutely. Okay, so that note, Facebook, I just want to say, all those who are listening and watching, thank you for tuning in, and until next week, I'll see you when I see you. Bye.